Before you read this, I am a tall, 5'10" college-aged girl who lifts and has a very take-no-shit attitude. I'm not a small girl, and I definitely don't consider myself physically weak. Yet this experience still shook me to my bones. This is long, but pretty cringy. So, my good friend, we'll call him Jack, told me he had met a guy who he thought I'd really get along well with. Jack said he knew this guy decently well from his lifting meets, but that from what he could tell, Alex was a cool guy and super nice. Jack is a good friend of mine, and I've always trusted his judgment. Jack said he met Alex multiple times, and that Alex had always been super nice and really seemed like a good guy. So, Jack kinda set Alex and I up. Keep in mind throughout this that Alex is a 6'3" and 300-pound powerlifter. Alex and I started talking, simple stuff at first, but it seemed really easy with him. He texted me first most of the time and held good conversations. He was a good-looking guy with similar interests of mine. We seemed to get along well. He gave me some pet names about a week and a half in, like Babe or Baby, but I didn't really mind or think of it as guys tended to do that stuff, and he and I had been pretty flirty with each other. He was very kind and polite with me over the phone. We got really comfortable with each other and told each other some really deep and personal things. We talk on the phone for multiple hours each night. Things seemed to be going well. After almost 3 weeks of texting, Snapchatting, and talking on the phone, Alex and I decided we should hang out. Now, Alex is a little over 2 hours away, but I agreed to drive to see him if he'd pay for gas money. Because he was so far away and we seemed to get along swimmingly, I agreed to spend Saturday and Sunday with him, spending the night at his house. Because I'm a grown woman, I figured spending the night wouldn't be such a big deal. Saturday comes around and I make the drive to meet him. I adore the drive, simply because I love to cruise and listen to music. The countryside was beautiful. I arrive in his town and find his apartment and park behind his car. I go up and knock on his door, and he opens it and envelopes me in a bear hug and squeezed me really hard to where my back cracked. I found this odd, but I didn't think too much about it until later on. We sat on his couch and started talking for a bit, but within 5 minutes of me being there, his tongue is down my throat. We had flirted quite a bit over text, so I didn't think too much about it. He tried to undress me, but I pushed his hand off of me and told him not yet. I wanted to actually get to know him a bit before that, but he totally insisted for about 20 minutes, and I gave in, although I wasn't totally comfortable with it. We messed around. It wasn't enjoyable, because I was uncomfortable the entire time. He gave me really, really weird vibes, and the more I thought about it, the more my stomach hurt. We finished up, and he held me as we watched some Netflix. He kept kissing my forehead where my hairline was, and I realized he was tasting my sweat. This made my stomach churn, and I rolled over so my back was facing him, so we couldn't anymore. He soon fell asleep and started snoring. I tried to calm myself and slept for a while to try not to think about it, hoping that when I woke up, I'd feel better. I mean, he and I had been getting along so well over the phone, right? I was sure I was just being silly. However, when I woke up, I felt worse. My stomach hurt and my skin was crawling, and I just knew that something wasn't right. I slipped out of bed and went out to the living room to find my phone and my clothes. I got dressed, sat on the couch, and texted a group chat with 2 of my really good friends. We tell each other just about everything when it comes to boys, and they had both known I was going out to meet him that weekend. I text them at 6:46 p.m., telling them that he was asleep and that I was totally uncomfortable. I told him that I didn't really want to piss him off. I didn't trust him. He scared me a little, and that I'd stay there that night, but I wasn't going to spend tomorrow there, and that I'd head out home in the morning. They told me to leave now while he was still asleep, but also agreed that I might be overreacting a bit. I jokingly told him that I wouldn't leave until I got my gas money. They agreed, joking back with me. They talked to me for a bit while he slept, acknowledging my worries and telling me to keep them informed, but also joking around and lifting my spirits a bit. I started to feel like maybe I was just worrying myself for no reason. At 7:49 p.m., I texted them that he had woken up because I could hear him getting dressed in the other room. I turned my phone on vibrate so he wouldn't get curious to who I'd been talking to. He came in and kissed me on the forehead and sat down on the couch next to me. We talked normally for a bit before he made a really shitty comment about how much he hated cops and how he would probably shoot one of them if he got the chance. I cocked my head as I listened and furrowed my brow, asking, "You realize my dad is a cop, right?" He looked at me dead in the eye and said, "Yeah, I remember you telling me." But he gave a chuckle and followed up with, "But of course not him." My stomach dropped again, and his eyes held mine for too long. I didn't waver, and I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to back down either, and soon he looked away. Quickly after that, he asked me if I was hungry. I told him I was, and he called and ordered pizza for carry-out, as we planned a pizza and movie night. He kept calling me his baby, but he would barely hold any eye contact with me, other than that awkward time after I mentioned my father. I quickly texted the group chat as he got his shoes on and such, letting them know that I was still really uncomfortable, and mentioning that he refused to hold any eye contact with me at all, other than in really long and uncomfortable bursts. I joked with them that I would stay there for the pizza, since I'm a chubby girl. While we waited for the pizza to be made, we laid on the couch with him sitting in between my legs and my back to the armrest. He played with my feet, stretching out my toes to where it hurt and also digging his nails into the underside of my toes. I would flinch, but he seemed to like my flinching away so soon. I just grit my teeth and let it happen. He asked me what size my feet were, and I told him, and he seemed pleased with my answer. I am a tall girl, so I have pretty large feet, but he also made a comment about how he wanted to keep them all for himself, which made my skin crawl. I am a very defiant and generally decently sassy girl, but I don't enjoy confrontation, and this man scared me, so I felt frozen. I texted my friends that he was playing with my feet, and jokingly sent them, "Is the pizza even worth it?" My friends have decent senses of humor, and the girl replied, "If it ain't Pizza Hut, it's not." Talking to them gave me a bit of security and relief, and I kept telling myself that I was probably overthinking some stuff. My guy friend from the group chat was worried about me and telling me to get out of there. I wanted to, but at that point I felt like I was too deep, and I was honestly scared he was going to hurt me or try to stop me if I tried to leave. I decided I'd eat the pizza with him and see if it got any better. We got into his car and went to get pizza, and on the way there I mentioned that I really liked his little town he lived in, as it was similar to where I go to college. And as we passed a building, he mentioned that he used to be a yell leader there. This was the first normal intro to a conversation he had said all night. So I asked him how he liked doing that. His answer was, "I like the guys, but I fucking hated the girls. Dumb bitches didn't know shit. I actually threatened one of the girls once that I was going to give her a Colombian necktie, and my coach told me I can go through with it." I, being a dumbass and somewhat sheltered girl, asked what a Colombian necktie was, and my stomach flopped as he explained it. "I highly doubt your coach would tell you to go through with that," I said in a dry tone, testifying at his story. He just told me, "Whatever," and drove on. He then proceeded to dig his thumb into my leg. I pushed his hand off my leg and told him that him digging his thumb into my leg was hurting, and he just looked over to me and gave me a huge smile and said that he was testing me. Thankfully, we got to the pizza place quickly, and he got out to get the pizza. I told him I would stay in the car, but really it was just so I could text my friends. I told them what had happened, and I considered bailing out of the car right then, but as the thought crossed my mind, He was already coming back out of the store with the pizza and getting in the car. I put my phone back under my right leg and looked straight ahead as we drove away from the pizza place, instantly regretting not getting out of the car while he was away. As we drove, he asked me about my parents, a relatively normal question, or so I thought. I told him that I was really close to my mother, but had been closer to my dad when I was younger. I mentioned that I had talked to my dad on the phone on the drive up. He grabbed my leg again and asked with a gut-wrenching inflection in his voice, "Yeah, I bet you're a daddy's girl. You sure look like one. Do you love your daddy?" And although I wanted to scream, I turned to him, looked him dead in the eye with a bland expression on my face, and said, "Yup." Apparently, that wasn't the reaction he was expecting, because after that, he shut up and didn't say anything until we got into the house. I walked up to his door carrying the pizza, but I felt like I was in a dream. My legs were walking forward, but I was screaming at them to run the other way. However, I couldn't, because I knew my keys were still sitting on the arm of his couch. I decided to play the role and get out when I could. We ate pizza. I watched him put my pizza on my plate. I was actually worried that he was going to drug me. I ate slowly, trying to prolong the time I could spend out of his arms, because the entire night, other than when he was sleeping, he had been touching me one way or another. I had already excused myself for the bathroom once, and I knew I couldn't again without raising suspicion, so I was stone-faced, trying to keep my panic at bay. He turned on a movie as we ate, and I actually got into it a bit. It definitely wasn't something I would usually watch, but I think I just needed a distraction. During the movie, a girl started crying and hyperventilating because she had watched somebody get shot. He laughed and shook his head. I looked at him a little wary, but didn't say anything. "I dated a girl who would have panic attacks," he said, saying panic attacks in the most mocking tone I ever heard before. "She'd have them at night, and I knew she was just faking that shit, so I would cover her face with a pillow and lay on her until she'd shut up. She'd fight it for a while, but after a while, she'd stop." He said it so casually, and my heart flared for that girl. "That's fucked up," I told him blandly. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you treat her like that?" I asked, obviously a little heated. He laughed, obviously enjoying how upset I was getting. "Because I couldn't fucking sleep." "So go to sleep on the couch," I said, my tone getting flat and obviously over his shit. He gave me a deadly look and said, "I don't sleep on the couch." I shrugged and laughed mockingly at his macho man routine, trying to seem indifferent, although I was actually scared shitless, and said, "Whatever." I turned back to the TV, but I could feel his eyes on me, glaring a hole into my face. I didn't waver and focused on what the actors were saying. Soon I felt him shift, so he was practically laying on me again. We watched for just a few minutes, and my mind raced. I'm an overthinker, so thoughts of what he might do to me if I stayed there flickered through my mind. I then realized that I didn't know where my phone was. I looked around best I could and saw it on the floor. I reached down and scooted it closer towards me before he grabbed my other hand and started sucking on my fingers. My toes curled in disgust, and I wanted to vomit when I thought about the fact that he actually touched my bare flesh earlier. I grabbed my phone with my free hand as he was distracted and set it on my chest. I took my hand away from him, and he let it go. After a few more minutes, he grabbed it again, and I took it away before he could kiss at it again. "What the fuck, babe?" he asked. I wanted to scream that I wasn't his babe, but I said, "I'm not in the mood and I want to watch the movie." He muttered under his breath, just barely audible enough for me to hear over the TV, "Bitch, shut the fuck up." My stomach shriveled up at his words, and my skin felt like it was on fire. The feeling of rage and fear made me feel sick. "Excuse me?" I asked. He looked at me, surprised that I had heard him, and we held eye contact for way too long. His eyes were unwavering and deadly, and I was waiting for a reaction. I decided I wouldn't give him one, so I looked back to the TV, but my skin pricked into goosebumps to the point that they actually hurt. Once he looked away again, I texted the group chat. I directed my text to the girl. I need you to call me in tears saying that your mom is in the hospital. Make it believable. He's right next to me. I need to get out of here, please." She agreed, and a few minutes later she called me. I answered, and she put on a show about how her mom wasn't doing well and that she needed me to be there. I agreed. I kept the phone to my ear as I quickly got up and put on my shoes, while also getting my jacket and keys. He stood as well and was obviously unhappy, towering over me as I tried to get my stuff together. I hung up the phone after putting on a pretty decent show and looked to him. I explained to him that I needed to go, but I would text him, where I had failed to realize that there was 3 different locks that he had locked. I fumbled with them, my hand shaking. He kept his deadly gaze on me and asked, "You'll come back in the morning, right?" To make it believable, I turned and gave him a kiss. "Of course, I just gotta deal with this. I'm sorry," I said. He perked up at this and agreed, unlocking the 3rd lock for me. I shut the door behind me and practically sprinted to my car. I pulled away quickly as I got to the stoplight a few blocks away. I broke out and sobbed. A rush of relief came over me, as well as the realization that I had trusted this man who was completely different than who he seemed to be. I felt so stupid. I called my friend, the girl, and let her know I was safe and that I was driving home. By now, it was well after 10:30 at night. I texted the group chat to let my guy friend know as well, and my foot was heavy on the gas as I drove. I checked the rearview mirror multiple times, hoping that he wasn't following me. Tears of relief and regret streamed down my face for almost half the drive home, but stopped as I finally hit the interstate. I felt safe and free from him as I took the on-ramp towards my home. My skin has been crawling since I got home, and I haven't been able to get the things he said to me out of my head. I'm not a religious person, but Alex, I pray that we don't meet again. Moral of the story, don't trust people you have only spoken with over the phone. Everything is not as it seems. Hey guys, thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the Nightmare Army. I'm always looking for new soldiers in my Nightmare Nation. And if you would like to support the Nightmare Army even further, please leave a PayPal donation if you want. So guys, I'm back at you again with another video. I wanted to upload for you guys a little bit more often, so I figured it'd be cool to do this instead just because, you know, I haven't seen you guys in a while and I miss you guys, so there you go. Also, I have to ask you guys a question. Have you guys played the new Resident Evil game? I beat it recently. Really good game, by the way. Very fun, very scary, actually. Very different from Resident Evil 6, which, despite what some people may say, I do like Resident Evil 6, but not as good as 4, or the other ones before it. But 7 is definitely... 7's a return to form. It's definitely scary. Actually, if I gotta tell you guys a funny story, I was talking to my friend on PSN, and as we're talking, I'm like, you know, I'm not really getting scared of the jump scares anymore. And he's like, nah. I'm like, yeah, nah. Like, 5 minutes later after that, the frickin' mom in the story scared the living crap out of me. I think I fired like 5 shots. I got so frickin' terrified. And I wish I had a video clip of it, but PSN's retarded when it comes to, like, recording video footage. But anyways, guys, as always, thank you all for watching, and just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.